アンバウンドの三上です。アンバウンドではここの会社の一応代表を務めてます。
I have fantastic news, ladies and gentlemen. A trend we have seen in the gaming industry the last few years has proved once again that it's not stopping anytime soon. Shift Up, the Korean company behind Stellar Blade and mobile game Goddess of Victory Nikki, has fully acquired Unbound, the Tokyo studio led by the GOAT Shinji Mikami. That means it bought 100% of the shares, folded the team into its structure, and will directly publish Unbound's future games. Unbound is focused on original AAA projects for PC and console, and Mikami has already said he's actively working on a fairly large new game. And that right there is why people are paying attention. Shinji Mikami is not just another veteran name getting attached to a news article. This is one of the defining creators in action and horror game design. We're talking about someone whose work is tied to Resident Evil, Devil May Cry, and The Evil Within. He has had a long history of making games that understand pacing, level design, and fun gameplay loops. His stuff moves, it knows exactly what it wants to be. So when a developer like that gets backed by a company that clearly wants to expand hard into premium console and PC development, that is not just random industry noise, it's a serious signal for what's coming. But what makes this especially interesting is that Shift Up is not making this move from a position of weakness. This is not a company trying to save itself with a desperate buy. Microsoft! This is a company using success to build outward. They already proved they can create a major hit on mobile with Nikki. They already showed with Stellar Blade that they can break into the high-end console market with a very specific style and a very clear gameplay identity. Now they're taking that momentum and using it to build a stronger PC and console pipeline while also pushing towards being a publisher instead of staying just a development house with a couple of big internal teams. This matters because the market right now is rewarding companies with focus. The studios that feel alive are the ones making games with a focused vision. They know what experiences they want to deliver and they build around that. You see it in non-Western companies like From Software. You see it in Shift Up. Even when people debate aspects of these games, they still feel intentional. They feel like somebody made choices and that they stood by them. Elden Ring did not become a phenomenon because it tried to sand off what made From Software games special. Stellar Blade did not get attention because it played things as safely as possible. Those games got traction because they committed to something and players can feel that immediately. And that gets us to the bigger reason this acquisition stands out. It fits with the broader pattern of where the momentum in gaming has been coming from. A lot of non-Western studios have been outperforming expectations because they tend to build around a very strong internal direction rather than trying to satisfy every possible customer in one product. Now that does not mean every non-Western studio is perfect and every Western studio is broken, but the contrast in design philosophy has become hard to miss. One side often says, here is the game we want to make. The other side too often says, here is the market slice we're trying to capture. And that difference changes everything downstream. It changes the pacing, it changes the combat design, it changes how much friction a game is allowed to have. It changes whether exploration feels handmade or checklist driven. It changes whether the story supports the play or keeps interrupting it. Once a project starts from broad demographic targeting instead of a strong core experience, you can usually feel it within the first hour. The game starts hedging. Systems will get softened. Mission design gets flattened out. Dialogue starts over-explaining everything. Every mechanic feels approved by 12 departments instead of sharpened by a director with a spine. It's games made for the lowest common denominator. That is where a creator like Mikami becomes so valuable. He has always understood the strength of controlled design. Tight levels, deliberate encounters, a real tempo. He knows when to push, when to let the players breathe, and when to hit them with something memorable. His games are usually at their best when they stay focused and linear enough to control rhythm without becoming restrictive. That kind of craftsmanship has become weirdly rare in big budget development because so many AAA game design now is obsessed with scale, cinematic framing, and prestige packaging. There is a lot of money being spent to make games look expensive. There is a lot less discipline being spent to make them fun. And that is one of the biggest problems on the Western AAA side right now. Budgets have exploded, team sizes have exploded, production timelines have exploded. Once that happens, decision-making slows down, risk tolerance collapses, and everyone starts protecting the investment instead of pushing the design. You end up with games that are technically massive but creatively bankrupt. Nothing can be too offensive, nothing can be too niche, and nothing can lock out a potential customer. So the result is often polished, huge, and entirely forgettable. You can see the symptoms everywhere. Excessive tutorials, long transitional sequences that exist mostly to maintain the cinematic tone, story delivery that overrides player momentum, set pieces that look great once and have no mechanical depth after the spectacle fades, huge open worlds filled with repeated tasks because the map has to justify the production cost. Even the language being used around these projects gives it away. They are constantly sold as experiences, worlds, cinematic narratives. Sometimes it feels like the actual game part is being treated as one component among many instead of the center of the vision. That is why players keep responding so strongly when something comes along and simply feels good to control. It sounds basic, but it isn't. Good movement, good timing windows, readable enemy behavior, strong feedback, clean encounter design, proper escalation, a fun-focused game. It gives a game replay value. It gives it identity. It gives people moments they actually remember from play instead of moments they remember from a cutscene. Non-Western studios have been much better lately at protecting that core. They tend to spend on the parts players engage with directly instead of treating gameplay like a delivery mechanism for the presentation. And they usually do it with leaner structures. That is another part people overlook. A lot of these teams are more disciplined with the scope of the project. They reuse technology well. They reuse assets intelligently. They build pipelines around what they actually make, not around what sounds good in the investor calls. That does not mean they are cheap. It means they are selective. They are willing to invest heavily where it counts and avoid bloating the project with systems that add cost without adding much value. That creates faster iteration, clearer accountability, and better moment-to-moment results. From Software is probably the best example of that. They don't reinvent every piece of their production stack from scratch every single time. They evolve what actually worked. They refine, they concentrate effort on combat, encounter layouts, atmosphere, enemy design, build variety, and world cohesion. Shift Up has shown some of that mindset too. Everyone knows Stellar Blade obviously has visual ambition, but the reason people stayed on it was the feel of the combat and the confidence in the game's identity. It knew what kind of experience it wanted to deliver, and it spent its energy there. That is why this pairing with Mikami makes so much sense. You have a company trying to become a more serious force in AAA console and PC publishing, and it is choosing to do that by backing a creator known for compact, focused, and mechanically driven games. That is a much better sign than chasing whatever genre happens to be hot this quarter. Instead of saying, let's build the safest possible blockbuster, this move says, let's empower a designer with a strong track record and let that identity lead the project. Now that does not guarantee a masterpiece, nothing does. And there is one obvious caution here, Mikami may not be there forever. He built Tango Gameworks as well, he stayed a long time, and he still eventually moved on. That is just reality in this industry. Legendary creators are not permanent fixtures, and companies cannot build their whole future around one individual. But even with that caveat, this still matters. If Mikami is deeply involved now, and if Shift Up is serious about supporting development, funding, and publishing without sanding the project into something generic, then the first result of that partnership could be exactly the kind of game the current market has been missing. And based on the early signs, it sounds like the project already has the right shape. A new original AAA IP for console and PC. Mikami directly involved. Likely horror or action horror energy based on how the reveal material has been interpreted. A team built specifically for premium game development. A parent company that wants more presence in the PC and console space and seems to understand the value of creator-led work. That's a strong foundation. And my own view on it is simple. Shinji Mikami makes games with a fun-focused mindset. He makes games that respect pacing. He understands how to keep players engaged without drowning them in filler. And right now, that's the kind of design that has more value than ever because so many expensive games feel structurally loose. They drag, they stop themselves every few minutes to prove how important they are. Mikami's best work does the opposite. It puts the controller first. That is also why I think the broader non-Western rise is real and not just a temporary cycle. These studios are not winning because they are magically better at everything. They are winning because they have been better at preserving the thing players actually show up for. They keep the focus on play. They let games be games. They are more willing to commit to niche ideas, more willing to build around a specific fantasy, and more willing to accept that not every product has to serve every customer. That creates a stronger identity and better long-term loyalty. Meanwhile, a lot of Western AAA still feels trapped in a loop of escalation without confidence. Bigger budgets, bigger teams, bigger maps, bigger presentation, and somehow a lot less bite. Less personality, less trust in the player, less design courage. That model can still produce hits, obviously, but it also produces a lot of games that feel made in assembly line instead of directed. The market is getting tired of that slop. Players are getting better at spotting the difference between ambition and bloat. So when I look at Shift Up and Unbound, I do not just see an acquisition. I see a blueprint for what's to come. A successful studio from outside the traditional Western power structure, using its momentum to back a legendary designer known for gameplay-first, tightly paced experiences. It expands into publishing, not by chasing a committee-approved trend, but by investing in a clear creative voice. And that is the kind of move that lines up with where players' taste has been heading, not where old AAA assumptions have been stuck. If this partnership works, it will not just give us an exciting new Mikami game. It will reinforce a lesson the industry keeps relearning the hard way. Players respond to confidence, not caution. They remember games with shape, rhythm, and identity. They come back to games that feel authored. And right now, Shift Up pairing with Shinji Mikami looks a lot closer to the future of big budget game development than another bloated cinematic product trying to please everyone at once. Anyways, let me know what you guys like to see from this new partnership. Do you want a survival horror or more action-focused game from Mikami? And have you noticed if you're now enjoying more non-Western games recently? Make sure to like the video and subscribe for more. That's all from me. See ya.